Picture this. You're scrolling through security camera footage from a missing person case. You expect to see a frantic burglar, maybe 2 minutes of chaos, someone grabbing valuables and bolting. But instead, the timestamp tells a different story. 41 minutes. Not 41 seconds. 41 full minutes of someone moving through a home like they owned it. Now imagine that home belongs to the mother of one of America's most recognizable television anchors. Imagine the victim is a 70-year-old woman who needs daily medication to survive, and those medications are sitting untouched on her kitchen counter while she vanishes. Imagine a ransom note appears, but experienced investigators immediately smell something wrong. And imagine the county sheriff makes a decision so unusual it sends shockwaves through law enforcement. He calls in homicide detectives on day one of what everyone's calling a kidnapping. This is the Nancy Guthrie case, and those 41 minutes are about to unravel everything. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from, because this case will challenge everything you assume about criminal behavior. February 2024. Pima County, Arizona. Nancy Guthrie lived in a quiet neighborhood. At 70, she required daily medication for serious health conditions. Her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, co-anchors NBC's Today Show. Nancy's home had security cameras and an alarm system. Then one weekend morning, Nancy disappeared from inside her own home while security systems recorded everything. When investigators reviewed the footage, they discovered something that elevated this case immediately. Digital timestamps showed someone had been inside Nancy's residence for exactly 41 minutes. 41 minutes is an eternity in criminal time. Career burglars operate on a 5-minute rule. Get in, grab what you can, get out. But whoever was inside Nancy's home wasn't operating under those constraints. They moved with what investigators described as eerie familiarity. Sheriff Chris Nanos made a decision that defined the investigation. He brought in homicide detectives publicly and deliberately. In a press conference quoted nationwide, Sheriff Nanos stated he rarely calls homicide investigators in missing person cases, but this one came with deeply concerning information. There is something, he told reporters, that is not right here. If this is your first time at the Case Files Collective, hit that subscribe button. We dig into evidence investigators use to separate truth from deception. Turn on notifications, because what comes next shows exactly why Sheriff Nanos knew from minute one this was no random kidnapping. Nancy Guthrie wasn't just any 70-year-old woman living quietly in Arizona. She was the mother of Savannah Guthrie, the co-anchor of NBC's Today Show, one of the most watched morning programs in America. Savannah's face appears on television screens in millions of homes every single day. She interviews presidents, covers breaking news, and represents one of the most trusted names in American journalism. That connection matters because it transforms this case from a local missing person investigation into something with national implications. High-profile families attract attention, and attention creates opportunities for people with bad intentions. Ransom demands become more appealing when the victim's family has resources. Grudges develop when someone feels wronged by a public figure. Obsessions form when strangers feel entitled to access someone's personal life. But here's what made investigators stop cold when they examined the timeline. Nancy disappeared on a specific date that wasn't random at all. It happened just hours before Savannah Guthrie was scheduled to leave the United States to travel to South Korea. She was heading overseas to cover the Winter Olympics for NBC, an assignment planned months in advance and publicly announced through network press releases. Think about that timing for a moment. Someone took Nancy right before her daughter would be on the other side of the world, unavailable for immediate response, dealing with time zone differences that would complicate communication, and focused on professional obligations that couldn't simply be abandoned. If you wanted to create maximum chaos while minimizing the family's ability to coordinate an immediate response, that timing would be surgical precision. Investigators don't believe in coincidences this convenient. When a crime happens at the exact moment that creates maximum advantage for the perpetrator, it suggests planning. It suggests someone who knew Savannah's schedule, who understood when Nancy would be most isolated, who recognized the window of opportunity that international travel creates. That kind of knowledge doesn't come from reading a local newspaper. It comes from being inside the circle of information, from having access to family schedules, from knowing details that aren't publicly broadcast. The timing wasn't luck. It was strategy. And that strategy pointed investigators toward a very specific conclusion about who might be responsible. When detectives arrived at Nancy Guthrie's home, they started documenting evidence the way they always do in missing person cases. They checked doors and windows for signs of forced entry. They examined locks for tampering. They looked for broken glass, damaged frames, anything that would indicate someone had to fight their way inside the residence. They found nothing. No forced entry. No broken locks. No shattered windows. Whoever entered Nancy's home that morning either had a key or was let inside by Nancy herself. That single fact immediately narrowed the suspect pool in ways that made investigators extremely uncomfortable. But the security camera situation made things even stranger. Nancy's home was equipped with both interior and exterior surveillance cameras, the kind of system designed to capture anyone moving through the property. The exterior cameras worked perfectly. They recorded activity outside the house, captured timestamps, functioned exactly as designed. But the interior cameras, the ones that would have shown faces and identifying details of whoever spent 41 minutes inside, were not operational during the critical window. Not broken randomly. Not malfunctioning due to power failure. Inoperable in a way that suggested someone either disabled them deliberately or knew in advance they weren't recording. Former DC Homicide detective Ted Williams analyzed this publicly and his assessment was blunt. The extended time inside the residence, combined with the camera situation, led him to believe the individuals involved were well aware of the cameras and knew those cameras were inoperable in that home. That kind of knowledge doesn't come from casual observation. You can't tell from the street which cameras inside a house are functioning and which aren't. You need to have been inside the residence before. You need to have had access to the property, time to observe the security setup, opportunity to understand which systems were active and which had vulnerabilities. Then there's the medication. Nancy required daily medication for serious health conditions. These weren't optional supplements or minor prescriptions. These were medications that kept her stable, that managed conditions requiring consistent treatment. The pills sat visible on her counter where she kept them for easy access as part of her daily routine. Kidnappers who want ransom need their victim alive. A dead hostage has no value in a ransom negotiation. Any criminal with basic understanding of kidnapping dynamics knows you keep the victim healthy enough to prove they're alive, healthy enough to be worth paying for, healthy enough to serve as leverage. Yet whoever took Nancy left behind the very medications that would keep her stable. That decision reveals intent in ways that made Sheriff Nanos immediately suspicious. Either the kidnappers didn't understand the medical necessity, which seemed unlikely given the time they spent in the residence, or keeping Nancy alive long-term was never part of the plan. The abandoned medication suggested this wasn't about ransom at all. It suggested something far darker. Detective Williams stated what many investigators were thinking. Spending 41 minutes inside a home is completely uncharacteristic of standard burglary or even typical kidnapping behavior. It suggests familiarity with the residence and its security infrastructure. It suggests comfort, confidence, and intimate knowledge of how that household operated. Every piece of evidence pointed in the same direction. No forced entry meant access or permission. Disabled interior cameras meant prior knowledge. Abandoned medications meant different intent than claimed. 41 minutes meant comfort and familiarity. Put it all together and you get one unavoidable conclusion. Whoever took Nancy Guthrie wasn't a stranger. They knew that house. They knew her routines. They knew exactly what they were doing. A ransom demand arrived, and on the surface, it looked like exactly what you'd expect in a kidnapping case. Contact was made. Money was demanded. Instructions were provided. But experienced kidnapping investigators know what professional ransom operations look like, and this wasn't it. Professional kidnappers follow patterns that maximize their chances of getting paid while minimizing risk of getting caught. They establish clear communication protocols. They provide proof of life quickly to demonstrate they have leverage. They set realistic deadlines and stick to them. They create urgency without giving law enforcement time to set traps. The Nancy Guthrie ransom communication did none of these things. Multiple deadlines passed without consequence. Communication became erratic and inconsistent. Most critically, no credible proof of life was ever provided in a manner that satisfied investigative standards. When detectives evaluate ransom situations, the absence of proper proof of life is a massive red flag. It suggests either the kidnappers are amateurs who don't understand how these negotiations work, or the victim is already dead and the ransom is theater designed to buy time or misdirect the investigation. The pattern felt wrong to everyone involved. It felt like someone performing a script rather than executing an actual kidnapping. It felt staged, calculated to create the appearance of a random crime when evidence suggested something far more personal and planned. Veteran investigators who've worked kidnapping cases for decades could smell the difference between genuine ransom negotiations and theatrical performance. This fell firmly into the latter category. Every experienced detective in the room understood what irregular ransom behavior signals. It means the crime isn't what it appears to be. It means someone is trying to control the narrative, to point law enforcement in the wrong direction while the real motive stays hidden. The ransom note wasn't leverage. It was misdirection. And that misdirection told investigators they needed to look much closer at who had reason to want Nancy Guthrie gone. While investigators worked the ransom angle, a neighbor named Laura Gargano noticed something odd about Nancy's property that would open an entirely new line of inquiry. She mentioned it to detectives during routine neighborhood canvassing, and her observation changed the direction of the investigation. Nancy's roof looked unusually clean. Freshly recoated. Spotless compared to the rain-stained roofs on neighboring houses that showed the normal wear and weathering you'd expect in that Arizona climate. Recent work had been completed on that roof just days before Nancy's disappearance. The timing made investigators immediately pay attention. Roof work means contractors had been on the property. Day laborers who spent hours at the residence over multiple days. Workers who observed daily routines while they measured, prepared surfaces, and applied coating. People who saw the interior layout when they used the bathroom or grabbed water from the kitchen. Individuals who understood the security system simply by being present and noticing which cameras were positioned where and whether they appeared operational. Construction workers often move through homes almost invisibly to the people who live there. Homeowners get used to their presence, stop paying attention to their movements, treat them like part of the furniture. But those workers see everything. They notice when someone lives alone. They observe what time routines happen. They understand vulnerabilities that would never occur to the homeowner. Investigators immediately began interviewing everyone who had worked on that roof. Background checks were run. Timelines were established. Alibis were requested. The contractor who hired the crew was questioned extensively about who specifically worked at Nancy's property, how long they were there, whether any of them had criminal histories or financial problems that might create motive. But roof workers weren't the only focus. Detectives also compiled lists of delivery drivers who had regular routes to that address. Service providers who maintained the property. Anyone who had recent or repeated access that would allow them to develop the kind of familiarity evident in that 41-minute timestamp. The suspect pool was broader than investigators wanted it to be. Dozens of people potentially had the access and knowledge necessary to execute what happened to Nancy Guthrie. Narrowing that pool required meticulous work, patient interviews, and hoping that someone would say something inconsistent or reveal knowledge they shouldn't possess. Laura Gargano's observation about the roof became a critical investigative thread. Sometimes the smallest details, the things neighbors notice but don't initially think are important, become the evidence that breaks cases wide open. A clean roof in a neighborhood of dirty roofs wasn't just aesthetics. It was a timeline marker that put specific people at the crime scene during the planning phase. Sheriff Chris Nanos held a press conference that would define how the public understood this case. He stood before cameras and microphones representing media outlets from across the country, and he said what veteran investigators already suspected but hadn't stated publicly with such clarity. He explained that he gets briefed on search and rescue operations daily, sometimes multiple times per day depending on what's happening in Pima County. Missing hikers. Lost elderly individuals with dementia. People who wandered away from care facilities. The county handles these situations regularly, and the protocols are well established. Search and rescue teams deploy. Efforts are coordinated. Families are updated. Rarely, Sheriff Nanos emphasized, does law enforcement ever call out homicide detectives in missing person cases. That decision is reserved for situations where evidence immediately suggests something far darker than someone getting lost or wandering away confused. Homicide investigators don't get involved unless there's specific reason to believe you're looking at a crime rather than an accident or medical emergency. But this case came across with information that was deeply concerning to Sheriff Nanos from the moment he was briefed. Information he couldn't fully disclose publicly because revealing details might compromise the investigation or alert suspects to what law enforcement knew. But information significant enough that he made the decision to bring in his most experienced criminal investigators on day one. There is something, Sheriff Nanos stated directly to the assembled media, that is not right here. Those words carried weight because they came from the county's top law enforcement official, someone who's seen thousands of cases and understands the difference between genuine missing person situations and crimes disguised as something else. That statement sent a clear message to anyone paying attention. The Pima County Sheriff's Department wasn't treating this as a standard kidnapping where they hoped to negotiate Nancy's safe return. They were treating it as a potential homicide where someone had gone to elaborate lengths to stage a different narrative. The ransom note, the communication, all of it might be theater designed to buy time and misdirect the investigation while the real perpetrators established alibis and distance. Search and rescue teams would continue their work. They would search targeted areas based on investigative leads. They would hope to find Nancy alive because hope is what you maintain until evidence proves otherwise. But the criminal investigation team had already started building a different kind of case. They were documenting evidence not for rescue but for prosecution. They were interviewing potential suspects not to eliminate them but to lock them into statements that could later be challenged. They were working this case the way homicide detectives work all their cases, with the assumption that the victim is deceased and someone is responsible. Sheriff Nanos couldn't say all of that explicitly during the press conference. Legal constraints, investigative strategy, and basic decency toward the family prevented him from being completely transparent about what evidence suggested. But his decision to involve homicide detectives publicly, and his statement that something wasn't right, communicated the essential truth. This case was not what it appeared to be, and law enforcement knew it from the beginning. The combination of the sheriff's public acknowledgement, the irregular ransom behavior, and the evidence of insider knowledge created a narrative that made national headlines. Nancy Guthrie's disappearance wasn't a random kidnapping gone wrong. It was something planned, something personal, something that involved someone who knew her and her household intimately. And Sheriff Chris Nanos was making sure everyone understood that his department was investigating accordingly. Investigators worked three primary theories, each supported by different fragments of the evidence puzzle. Understanding these theories matters because one of them is almost certainly true, and the evidence points in multiple directions simultaneously. Theory 1 centered on contractor revenge or opportunistic crime. Someone with intimate property knowledge, someone who had recently worked at the residence, someone who observed Nancy's routines and vulnerabilities during legitimate work. The roof had been freshly recoated just days before her disappearance. Workers spent hours on that property, saw the interior layout, noticed which security cameras functioned and which didn't. Day laborers often work unnoticed, background figures who see everything while homeowners barely register their presence. A worker who felt slighted, underpaid, or simply saw opportunity could have planned this entire operation during what appeared to be normal roof maintenance. This theory explained the insider knowledge perfectly but struggled to account for the timing coinciding with Savannah's international travel. Theory 2 suggested staged kidnapping masking something darker. The ransom was theater, an elaborate performance designed to point investigators toward random criminals when the real motive was personal. Maybe financial gain unrelated to ransom. Maybe long-standing resentment. Maybe something in Nancy's personal life that hadn't surfaced publicly. This theory explained why the ransom communication felt wrong, why proof of life never materialized, why the medications were abandoned. If keeping Nancy alive was never the goal, then the ransom note was just misdirection buying time for whoever was responsible to establish distance and alibis. This theory fit the evidence but required a level of premeditation that made investigators deeply uncomfortable. Theory 3 focused on targeted attack exploiting Savannah's fame. High-profile daughter creates enemies her mother never knew existed. Obsessed fans. Disgruntled sources. People who felt wronged by Savannah's reporting and wanted revenge but couldn't access her directly. Targeting Nancy while Savannah was overseas created maximum psychological damage while minimizing immediate response capability. Someone in Savannah's professional or social circle with schedule knowledge could have planned this with surgical precision. This theory explained the timing perfectly but struggled to explain the 41 minutes of comfort inside the house unless the attacker had also gained access to Nancy's home previously under different pretenses. Each theory fit fragments of evidence. None explained everything. Investigators knew one was likely correct, but which one remained frustratingly unclear as the case continued without resolution. While investigators worked behind closed doors building their case, Nancy's family lived through every parent's worst nightmare in the most public way imaginable. Savannah Guthrie, whose job requires composure in front of millions of viewers daily, released emotional video statements pleading for her mother's return. She spoke about nightmares that wouldn't stop. About her mind feeling haunted by what might be happening to her mother. About the helplessness of being a public figure with resources and connections but still unable to bring her mother home safely. The nation watched a daughter's anguish play out in real time while investigators worked cases that rarely have happy endings. The family's pain was genuine and devastating. They wanted Nancy back. They wanted answers. They wanted someone arrested and held accountable. But wanting those things and getting them are completely different realities in complex criminal investigations. What the family experienced emotionally existed separately from what investigators knew evidentially. Both realities were valid. Both deserved attention. But they required different approaches and led to different actions. The family's focus was hope and recovery. Law enforcement's focus was evidence and prosecution. Those paths don't always align, especially when evidence suggests outcomes nobody wants to acknowledge. Savannah's public pleas kept the case in national headlines. That attention created pressure on investigators to deliver results, but it also meant every move they made was scrutinized publicly. They couldn't discuss evidence openly. They couldn't reveal investigative theories that might compromise prosecution. They had to balance transparency with strategic silence, a nearly impossible task when a grieving family and watching nation demanded answers. The emotional weight of watching a family suffer while knowing more than you can publicly say is something every detective working high-profile cases carries. You want to give them closure. You want to tell them what you know. But doing so could destroy the very case that might eventually bring justice. So you stay silent, and you work the evidence, and you hope that when you finally can speak, you'll have something meaningful to say. Forensic timeline analysis reveals details that casual observers miss but experienced investigators recognize immediately. The 41 minutes wasn't random duration. It was time spent doing something specific, something that required extended presence inside the residence. Investigators worked backward from that timestamp asking crucial questions. What takes 41 minutes in someone else's home when you're committing a crime? Not grabbing valuables. Not overpowering a victim. Not fleeing the scene. 41 minutes suggests searching for something specific, disabling security systems methodically, possibly staging evidence to support a false narrative. Think about what you could accomplish in 41 minutes with uninterrupted access to someone's home. You could go through filing cabinets looking for financial documents. You could search bedrooms for valuables or information. You could disable cameras and alarm systems one by one. You could clean up evidence of what really happened. You could stage a scene to look like something it wasn't. Every one of those activities requires comfort and confidence. Panic doesn't last 41 minutes. Fear doesn't allow you to work methodically for that duration. Whoever was inside Nancy's home wasn't operating under the stress that normal criminals experience during the commission of a crime. They worked like they belonged there, like they had time to be thorough, like discovery wasn't a concern. That behavioral profile told investigators something crucial about the perpetrator's relationship to Nancy and her home. This wasn't a stranger grabbing a random victim. This was someone who had been inside that residence before, who understood the layout well enough to navigate it efficiently, who knew where things were kept and how systems operated. The 41 minutes also suggested premeditation at a level that elevated this from crime of opportunity to carefully planned operation. You don't accidentally spend that much time inside someone's home. You plan to be there that long because you have specific tasks to accomplish, specific evidence to create or destroy, specific narratives to establish. When investigators brief prosecutors on cases like this, the timeline becomes central to proving intent. Random crimes don't have 41-minute windows of calm, methodical activity. Planned crimes do. That timestamp alone could be the difference between charges and convictions, between someone walking free and someone spending life in prison. The 41 minutes told the story of someone who worked inside Nancy's house like they lived there. Calm, calculated, completely unafraid of discovery. That's not how strangers behave. That's how someone with keys and knowledge behaves. No arrests have been made. No suspects have been publicly named. No body has been recovered. The case remains officially open and active, with investigators continuing to follow leads and process evidence according to their statements. But the silence from law enforcement tells its own story. When Sheriff Nanos called in homicide detectives on day 1, he set expectations that this case would not have a happy ending. When he stated publicly that something was not right here, he signaled to anyone paying attention that investigators knew more than they could say. The 41-minute timestamp remains the central piece of evidence that defines this investigation. That duration screams premeditation, insider knowledge, and calculated execution. The abandoned medications suggest intent to harm rather than ransom. The disabled interior cameras point to someone familiar with the security setup. The timing coinciding with Savannah's international travel demonstrates planning and opportunity awareness. All of this evidence points in one direction. Someone close to Nancy, someone with access and knowledge, someone who planned this carefully and executed it during a window of maximum advantage. But pointing in a direction isn't the same as proving guilt beyond reasonable doubt in court. Investigators know what likely happened. They have theories supported by evidence. They understand the timeline and the behavioral profile of whoever was responsible. What they apparently don't have yet is enough to charge someone and guarantee conviction. So they wait. They build. They hope for the break that turns theory into prosecutable fact. Sheriff Nanos knows more than he can say. The homicide detectives working this case know more than they can reveal. Somewhere in the evidence they've collected is the answer to what happened to Nancy Guthrie. The question is whether that evidence will ever be strong enough to bring someone to trial. Justice waits. The family grieves. The nation watches. And somewhere, someone who spent 41 minutes inside Nancy Guthrie's home on that February morning knows exactly what happened. Whether they'll ever be held accountable remains the unanswered question that haunts this case. If you want to stay updated on cases like this where evidence tells a story that investigators can't yet fully reveal, make sure you're subscribed to the Case Files Collective with notifications turned on. Because when breaks happen in cases like Nancy Guthrie's, you'll want to know immediately. Justice may be slow, but it's still coming.